Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Scheidegger, and as you know, I'm not here today. So I would like to go over this section 4 with you with this YouTube video. Now, I need you all to have a piece of paper, this packet in front of you, so hopefully the substitute has already given it to you. And what I want you to do is take your pencil out and work with me exactly as if we were in the classroom together. If you do have some questions, you may want to stop and ask somebody else, but one of the things that's useful here is that if you don't understand something, you can stop and rewind. And also, if you understand this very, very well all on your own, you may know too that on YouTube you have the ability to speed things up. So I may sound funny, but if you want to go at 1.5, it might speed up your day a little bit. So what I'm going to do right now is go through all this go through all these examples, and when I'm done, I'm hopeful that you'll be able to do the homework. And again, if you need this video for reference, it's just going to be right here where you found it. So you'll always be able to play it back, and you'll go ahead and see. You can get examples of the questions that you're going to see from your homework from the work I'm doing here. So let's go ahead and start off. First of all, what we're doing here is we're dealing with multi-step inequalities. So this is more than one step. If you remember, we've either subtracted or added, multiplied or divided. You didn't do anything more than one step. So this one's a little bit more practice with our algebra. Remember that the rule is that whenever we divide or multiply by a negative number, we need to switch the sign, but otherwise everything is exactly like the equations. Also, please make sure that you practice graphing so that when we do get to the test, you're not going to lose points on something so silly. So let's just go ahead and get used to it. Let's go ahead and move on to our first question here in A. And what I want to do is remember that when we're doing solving, it's usually easier to do all our subtractions first. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to subtract, in this case, I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. And which is okay. That doesn't do anything to the sign. I get y over negative 6 is equal to, sorry about that, is less than 2. Now I have a y being divided by negative 6. To undo a division by negative 6, I'm going to multiply by negative 6. But when I do that, when I multiply by negative 6, I'm going to have to change the sign. So I'm going to flip the sign. Now it's going to be 2 times negative 6. And so I get the final answer is going to be y. I'm going to go up here so I get a little more space. Y is greater than, you see how I switched the sign here, right? Is greater than negative 12. And if we do our quick graphing, that's going to look like, you put your 0 in the middle, 12, negative 12. And in this case, it's going to be a hollow dot. And we're going to shade to the right. So make sure that makes sense to you. And if it does, then we can go ahead and move over to the next problem, B. And please, again, I'm reminding you to continue to do this with me. I'm going to do my subtractions and additions first to simplify. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. And I will get 2v is greater than or equal to 12. And divide by 2. And I get v is greater than or equal to 6. No switching signs there. In this case, the graph's pretty simple. I've got a 6 and I've got a negative 6. And I'm going to go to my 6 and draw a filled in dot because it's going to be also equal to, and then I shade to the right. So that's how that works. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now is those questions 1 through 4 right below you. I would like you to do those on your own. And so I'm going to ask you to pause this video for the moment and do those on your own. And what's going to happen is when you unpause it, you will likely see the answers that I put together for you. So please pause now and do questions 1 through 4. Okay, welcome back. Let me quickly show you what something weird happened there. Anyway, for number 1, somewhere in here is the answer. B is less than 2, and hollow dot, shade to the left. That was pretty straightforward. Number 2 is also reasonably straightforward, except that in this case, we're going to divide by a -9, which means that we have to switch the signs. So if you notice right here, all right, we switch the sign when I divided by the -9. I recommend switching it as soon as you get that division sign in there. So, and then for this one, it's going to be C is greater than equal to 4. Hopefully that makes sense. The next question here, number 3, we have to subtract 11 first. Do the subtractions first, makes it easier. You could, if you wanted to multiply everything by -2, that works too, but it just, when you do the subtractions first, it's a little easier. Then I'm going to multiply in number 3. I'm multiplying by -2, which forces me to switch the sign, and I get n is less than -2. So if you got that wrong, please take a moment and look at this, pause for a moment and just make sure you get it. Number 4 was probably the more complex one, because I put the negative sign in the front. It's kind of, it may kind of mislead you a little bit. Remember that the negative sign can go either on the front, it can go on the top, and it can go on the bottom. But clearly what happens is first, I'm going to subtract the 5 from both sides. So, and I get down to this line here where I have the -v over 6. Well, I have to multiply by -3 because I want the v to end up being positive at the end. And so, so I multiply by -3, switching the signs, and now I end up with v. I get -3 is less than or equal to v. Flipping it, I get... oh goodness, it looks like I made a mistake there. So I will, let me fix that while I'm looking at it. I'm not sure if you guys see the same error, but it looks like when I switched it, I didn't put the right sign in. So it should have been v is greater than or equal to, which means again that it looks like I messed up on my graph, and I should have been shading in the opposite direction. So there we go. Now we're all corrected and we're good. So let's go to the next page. That's it for now. Let's make sure that you're being nice to the substitute, and you should be able to take a break at some point, hopefully, and put your headphones on. If you don't have headphones, you may ask the substitute to see if there's any headphones in the bottom left-hand drawer, because I do have a couple that I borrowed from Air New Zealand when I went to New Zealand a couple of years ago. So if you don't have headphones, please use those. If you don't, actually, I guess you already did this. So you take care now, and I'll see you when I get back. Bye now. And here we have inequalities with variables on both sides. So sometimes you guys find that a little challenging, but again, the idea is I want the x's on one side and the constants, which is our algebra name for just a number, on the other side. So just know that you have a choice between either subtracting 2x or subtracting 6x. The choice of subtracting the 2x is probably better because it keeps everything positive with no negative numbers. So let's go ahead and take a look at, let's go ahead and do this, subtracting the 2x from both sides. So when you look at these, they can look complicated, but do one step first and then see what happens. So if I subtract the 2x from both sides, I end up with 4x minus 5 is less than 11. So already it looks a lot simpler. So make sure that you don't look at a problem and just make it. Sometimes problems look very, very complicated at first, but just do one step and you're going to find that suddenly it looks a little bit better. And now I'm going to add 5 to both sides. giving me a 4x less than 16, and our last step with a division by 4. Now again, it's division by 4, not subtraction, because the x is being multiplied by 4. I need to divide by 4, and that's what happens when I put a 4 in a denominator. X in this case is going to be less than 4. Again, the graph, just be practice at this. Do it, you don't have to spend a lot of time with this graph, but just make sure that you know what you're doing. So it's going to be less than x. That means it's going to be a hollow dot, and we're going to shade to the left. Okay, so that is equations with variables on both sides. So it should be somewhat familiar to you. Here is inequalities with special solutions. Now, special solutions are similar to what we saw with equations when we had all solutions or no solution, things like that. So let's take a look at these two and see what they give us. So let's go ahead and try A. And so on the right-hand side, notice we're going to need to distribute, but let's go ahead and rewrite. I got 8b minus 3 is greater than 8b, that's 4 times 2b, plus 12. Now what happens is I subtract. You may already see that there's a weird issue going on. So if I subtract 8b from both sides, something crazy happens. We get this negative 3 is greater than 12. Well, I don't think that's true ever. And if something in the end is not true, then we need to say no solution. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at B. And in this case, we're going to distribute again. We get 2, I'm sorry about that. Let's try that again. 2 times 5w is going to be 10w. And then minus 2, less than or equal to 7 plus 10w. Now, again, we subtract, and the variable 10w ends up canceling out. We get negative 2 is less than or equal to 7. Now, this is a situation where we have a true statement. So whenever we have a true statement, we can say infinitely many solutions or all solutions. I'm trying to remember what the book is going to write it as. All real numbers are solutions, I guess. So all real numbers or infinitely many solutions or all. I like the word all real numbers because that's consistent with the terminology we're going to use in Algebra 2. So all real numbers, any value. Okay, so that will set you up for those types of questions that you're going to also get in the homework. So it's possible that you're going to get this strange-looking thing at the end. Just make sure if at the end you get something that's not ever true, then that's a no solution. If you get something like on the right-hand side, B, that means all real number solutions. So all answers. So let's move over to let's go to the next page. All right. And on the next page, we have some solving inequalities problems for you to do. And again, what I'm going to ask you to do right now, these may have no solutions or all real number solutions or maybe even one solution. We don't know. But let's go ahead and do these really quickly. Not really quickly. Do them as quickly as you want. And let me go ahead and ask you to pause for the moment. And when you unpause, what's going to happen is I'll have the solutions there for you. So please take a moment, pause, and do these problems. Okay, welcome back. So let's take a look at number 5. The answer to number 5 is x is less than or equal to 4. That was relatively straightforward. Again, on this one, I chose to subtract the smaller x value, so I could keep the 2x positive. That way I don't have to do any sign switching, right? Which is, but either way, it would work. In 6, you end up with negative 10 is less than 5, which is a true statement, which means that the answer is all real numbers. And in contrast to that, on number 7, if you follow the work that I just did, you end up with 4 is greater than 5.2. This is never true, therefore we'll write no solutions for that problem. Number 8, number 8 is just a standard problem. You distribute the 3, and you end up with a 6a minus 3, greater than or equal to 10a minus 11, subtracting the 6a, and then also adding the 11. Eventually you end up with 2 is greater than or equal to a, or a is less than or equal to 2. One of the things it didn't, I don't know if you noticed on the instructions, it didn't say to graph, so you just needed to solve. All right, so let's go to the last page. So, and before you can understand this question, I need to just review really quickly this concept called average. If we're trying to find the average of a number, say we have a number 6 and 8. So, let me do something a little bit more ridiculous anyway. 6 and 10. The average of 6 and 10 is going to be 6 plus 10 divided by the number of numbers you have there. So it's divided by 2. 6 plus 10 is going to be 16 divided by 2. It's equal to 8. That's the average. What happens if I have 3 numbers like 6 plus 8 plus 10? In a case like this, I'm going to have to divide. I add them all up, and then I divide by 3. So the idea is that depending on what you're averaging, you add up the numbers and you divide by the number of numbers you're adding. So if there's 4 numbers you're adding together, you'll add them up and then divide by 4. So let's go ahead and use that idea for this next question. It says you need a mean score, which is average. You need an average score of at least 90 points to advance to the next round of the touchscreen trivia game. What scores in the 5th game will allow you to advance? So the idea is the given information that we have is that we need at least 90 points, right? So our given is at least 90 points. So what other information we have? Well, the other information actually comes from the screen. So we have game 1 is 95. So I'll just go G1 equals 95, G2. I'm sorry, I'm mixing up my, I should not be doing that to you guys. Let me just use a small g for these numbers. So G1, 95, game 2 is, looks like 91. Game 3 is 77. And game 4 is 89. Now, what's unknown is game 5. What am I going to need for game 5? So let's go ahead and figure out what the equation of this is going to be. Well, it's we're dealing with the mean. So what we need to do is average all these values. And if you notice, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers, one that we don't know, and the average looks like it's going to be it has to be at least 90 points. So let's go ahead and set up the average. You got 95 plus 91 plus 77 plus 89 plus, well, we don't know what the 5th one is going to be. Let's just call it X for now, and then we divide by 5. And this has to be at least, which is the same as greater than. This needs to be greater than or equal to 90. So it's okay if this number's like gives us a 91 or 92 or 93. It's also okay if it just gives us a 90. So how do I solve this one? Well, you're going to need your calculator to do that. And but the first step is to get rid of this 5 on the bottom. And I don't know if you guys are clever enough to figure it out, but if we just multiply both sides by 5, we can make this 5 cancel here, and then we get the sum of all these numbers equals 90 times 5, which is going to be 450. So we'll need a calculator to add up all those numbers. Let me add them up right now. And I get 352. So 352 plus x equals 450. And what I'm going to do is subtract the 352 from both sides. And I get a final answer of x is greater than or equal to 98. So that's the minimum score I have to get to be able to advance to the next round. So next question, it says on the bottom here, it says, what if you need a mean score of at least 85 to advance to the next round? What score in the 5th game would allow you to advance? So this is actually for you to do. I would be very impressed if you could really, really quickly figure out what it is. So I'm going to give you a chance to pause and come back. So think about it for a minute, and then unpause, and we'll go over this. Well, I'm not sure how you did on that. It looks complicated, but the answer is it's actually pretty straightforward. I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did before, where I'm going to set up the average of the 5 games, with the 5th game being X. But in this case, I'm looking for a mean score of an average score of 85. So again, I'm going to want to multiply both sides by 5 to get rid of the 5 here. It's a nice technique. Cancels the 5s, but increases this by, and you take your calculator out. 85 times 5 is going to be 425, and this is still going to be adding up to 352 plus x. Again, you might need your calculator to do that. Subtract the 352 from both sides, and in this case, your x value, or your score on the game, needs to be at least, if you subtract, is going to be, let me see. I want to say 87, but that doesn't look right. No, actually, I got that right. Sorry about that. 425 minus 352 is 73. So that would have been a nice, it would have been nice if that's the way you advance. But anyway, so with a 73, you would advance to the next game. Well, anyway, it looks like we're done for now. What I'm going to ask you to do is to go to Big Ideas Math. And on the Big Ideas Math, you're going to find the assignment A1 HW 2.4. And that will be your homework due for Monday. And then on Monday, you'll have there should be somebody else there for you. But good luck. I hope this made sense. If it didn't, you can always play back certain parts of it. And hopefully that'll work for you. So as you do the homework, if you see a problem that you recognize from the class, please go back and review that part of the video, and hopefully everything will be great.